Space. An infinite vacuum of serenity and peace, every so often interrupted by the stray sound of a comet passing, a meteor striking a planetoid, and even... That's right, today we are taking a look at another entry into our Astrological Pokemon series with Aries. I'm the Thesterninator, my friends call me Stern, and welcome to the channel. Aries has been kind of a tough one, and honestly one that I've been putting off for quite some time. The reason for that is because I'm an Aries, and full of myself as it may seem, it is a Pokemon that I wanted to get right desperately. I have a lot more knowledge about this sign than I do about others, just because, well, it's me. They're hard-headed, they're stubborn, difficult to get through, but when you can, they tend to be very worthwhile allies to have. And I say all that knowing that I might, hopefully, and unfortunately, be talking about myself. So, again, this one just took a little bit of time to get through. How do I create something that encapsulates these ideas? That's kind of been the challenge with every single one of these entries. How do you get all of these concepts, these ideas, these personality traits out in a single design? Well, lucky for me, Aries is pretty straightforward. What's more hard-headed than a ram? I mean, that's kind of the whole point, right? That's where we get the term ram as a verb, because they're so hard-headed that they just rush into things headlong, and that was really informative. So I started by drawing out this design, and I wanted it to be something small and cute because I know what it will become. A little bit of backing to that. How do we make something that people can connect with that's also this eventual big, strong monster? So I made it smaller, kind of cute. I wanted to bring in a lot of the elements that really made it feel like a ram or like a baby ram, which might be a kid. I don't know. I know goats are called kids, but there were a couple things that I really had to make sure that I integrated into this. One of which is the fact that, secret about me, I am terrified of rams and goats. And it's not because I'm afraid of them. It's not because, I'm terrified that they're going to attack me, strike out, and headbutt me or anything like that. No. It is something a little bit more complex than that. My fear for these animals fully rests on those eyes. Those weird sideways eyes. There's something about them that is altogether unsettling, and it strikes fear into me, so I knew that those had to be a part of the design as well. But regardless of my fears and the uncanny valley that rests within the face of this creature, I ended up being really happy with it. I think it's cute. I think it gets the point across that this is a starter form, and it's something that I'm really happy with. Another thing was I kind of got to cheat with this a little bit. Regardless of how you feel about what typing a goat or a ram should have, I wanted to make it my favorite type. So this has some electrical qualities to it. Maybe you got that from the color, maybe you'll get that from later design elements to it, but I knew I wanted this to be an electric type. So, Kilowatt, the hard-headed Pokemon. This Pokemon is quite efficient at turning food into energy. They will split their time between grazing on the lush green fields of the region and expelling the electrical charges that they build up by ramming their heads into one another. It is said that when two Kilowatt challenge one another, the challenger takes up a positive charge while the other takes up a negative. It is not the force of the blow that determines the winner, but the strength of the output of electrical charge. Here we have Kilowatt, a base play on the idea of a kilowatt and a kid as a baby goat or baby ram. I made it electric ground type because I thought I really can't avoid the idea that this thing dashes along and headbutts things. I thought, how do I incorporate that? Fighting? Well, I didn't know if I wanted to be fighting necessarily, so I brought in that ground typing. I gave it a few abilities that I think really handle what it is and what it can do, and the shiny I made blue because for me, blue and yellow are the colors of electricity. I don't know why. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you know why I have this psychological urge to make electricity blue. But I am happy with it. It seems super fun. And I feel like it really encapsulates that hard-headedness associated with the Aries sign. But speaking of hard-headedness, let's move on to this Pokemon's evolution. And before we do that, I wanted to remind you that you can now purchase designs like Kilowatt and its evolutions at Ko-fi, You can also support the channel by becoming a Pokemaniac and subscribing for $5 a month. With this, you'll receive 15% off of commission requests purchased through Ko-fi. You'll also receive a shout out at the end of videos and a whole bunch of other stuff. If you want early access to videos and first looks, you can subscribe at Patreon, where I just recently dropped a process video for the Costa region's Pokemon Professor. The full breakdown will be uploaded here later this month, but Patreon supporters get in early, plus shout outs and a ton more. This channel has been a major passion project of mine that's been able to continue thanks to you guys, so thank you. And without much further ado, let's go on and get looking at Kilowatt's evolution. So with this design, I knew that I had to go whole hog into the idea of it being a ram. It could no longer be this fluffy little cute thing. I mean, it could, but that's not what I wanted to do. After all, this is my astrological sign. I wanted it to feel big and beefy. So I started by giving it that terrifying eye that I hate so much, and then focusing on the horns. The horns have to be a focal point of this thing. I went in believing that, understanding that if it's going to be a ram, it's got to have these huge horns. But then I started thinking of other things. Well, if it's a ram, I like that they have those huge tufts of fur under their neck. You know, they have these big shoulders, and I wanted to capture that as well. And they have these massive hooves that are used for attacking and galloping and striking out at opponents and things like that, so I want to get that as well. Very quickly, I found that I had a lot more on my plate than I anticipated. So how do I incorporate all of that while making sure that this thing isn't overcrowded? It came down to balancing. I feel like every time I do one of these drawings, I learn something new, or I am reminded of something that I already knew. So with this, I thought, how do I keep from overcrowding? Well, what if I make these things kind of balanced? What if I think of the shapes that I want for this? I tend to go with a lot more rigid and structured shapes, a lot of hard lines, a lot of straight lines, perpendicular lines, things like that. And with this, I had to go round. I thought if we're gonna go the way of this being lightning and thunder based, then I have to go whole into that. I have to take all of those things into account and find a way to not feel overcrowded with what I was designing. So I thought, what if taking in those round aspects, taking in this lumpy shape, I made it feel more like a storm cloud. It could still be a color more associated with rams, being that we have black rams and dark gray and ashy rams, but I could make it work here. If I use these round shapes to give it not an exact shape of a storm cloud, but something that mimics that idea, that could work. So I played around with that. I played around with color a lot in this design. Again, I maybe went for some blue and then decided against it, and eventually went with something that felt a lot more natural. And I feel like that allowed me as well to keep that ground typing. Giving it that brownish color to the flesh parts of the ram really allowed me to play with introducing both typings. I got so excited with it being an electric type, my favorite type, that I completely ignored the rest of the prompt that I'd given myself. So I was able to bring that in and allow those aspects to shine through. Now, I know it feels like an easy fix saying make it brown, that way it's ground type, but with me ignoring so much of that aspect, it felt really like this was a good place to go. Make it feel ground by grounding it, giving it a little bit more of that realistic energy of it being that brown type color. And even as I finished, I made it a little bit more yellow, but I'm happy with the idea that I was able to incorporate both typings into this thing that I'd fully forgotten about and was just wholeheartedly ready to go all electric. And I think that that really captures the Aries mindset. I'll get more into that in just a sec. Amperamp, the hard-headed Pokemon. Always ready for a challenge, any trainer that stumbles across an Amperamp isn't going to have to deal with the question of whether they want to battle or not, as Amperamp will take off after anything it perceives as a threat. As they gallop, their hooves build up a strong electrical charge that they're able to harness in their thick neck muscles and expel through their horns. Their bodies are perfect conduits for the flow of electrical currents. Once again, we have that beautiful blue for the shiny, as well as these like golden horns and hooves that I thought really function as these conduits mentioned in the Pokedex entry. So I thought about the idea of utilizing the shape of the muscle almost like that cloud inspiration that I was talking about before. Whereas clouds can hold electrical charge which create lightning, the body functions very similarly. It's able to pull in energy through the hooves, turn that into something else, and expel it out through the horns. I love the idea of that and the concept of this thing being a living factory. Research addendum. I want to start by stating how aware I am that picking a fight with an Amperamp is a bad idea. The thing chased me nearly 2 miles. I was looking for climbable trees or rushing creeks that I could get to in any effort to outmaneuver the thing, when it suddenly stopped in its tracks. It was just past dusk when I was finally able to catch my breath as the Amperamp ceased the chase and started looking longingly up into the sky. It was as if something had called out to it, and in a flash of light, the Amperamp had metamorphized into something wholly new. It was a lot more fearsome than its previous form, that's for sure, but it also seemed wiser somehow. I mean, at least that's what I thought before it started chasing me again. Whenever I do these drawings, I do learn a lot, not just about the sign that is associated with the Pokemon, but also about myself. And I had to take myself into heavy account when doing this design, being, again, I am an Aries. What am I trying to say about myself, and what is this design saying about me? I know that often as an Aries, I get the terms hard-headed or brash brought up. They're the negatives of this sign. Aries are easily angered, they're impulsive, but they can also be passionate. They can be brave, they can be independent, energetic, and confident, and with those things comes a certain wisdom. With every sign, there are positives and negatives, and I think I've spent a lot of time looking at the negatives that come with being an Aries. I look at that impulsiveness as a negative, but it can also be something that turns into passion. It can be something that allows us to experiment with who we are and what we want to do. It's that very thought and process and positive outlook that allowed this channel to exist in the first place, and it's something that I hope a lot of you guys have come to enjoy. Seeing these designs and seeing how they can define a certain symbol, seeing how they can become the sign that they're supposed to be a reference to. And I take all those into account and see how I can learn. While I may be an Aries and a cusp Pisces on the best of days, I see myself in a lot of the other signs as well. When I did the Cancer sign, I was able to see some of my own flaws and some of my own good qualities. Same thing with Libra and with Capricorn. These different elements don't define you fully, but you are able to take into account the different elements of these signs and see where they fit you. That to say, if you haven't watched the other episodes in this series, maybe give them a look. See where you can spot yourself in the background. With this one, I was able to see myself very clearly in the foreground, and I wanted to ensure that what it became once it was aligned with the certain stars being right, able to get this metamorphosed state, that it was something I could be proud of. That it accomplished and encapsulated an idea that I hope I may not be, but that I can be. Something that feels strong and powerful, something that feels like, yeah, it could be impatient and impulsive, but at the same time, it is energetic, confident, and independent. So I wanted to capture that here, and apart from that, there are a lot of other design elements that I was really happy with. I like the idea that I was able to take that living factory or living power plant type of element and expand on it, giving it these huge hulking shoulders and wrap around almost vest style design to further bring in that idea of it generating power based on its speed and running and transforming that within its own body. I thought that was really cool, and kind of keeping that cloud type shape but expanding on it I thought was a lot of fun. So here we have Amperamp in its awakened form, or its alignment form, or whatever it may be. Let me know in the comments what you think these forms should be called. Just to give you some backstory on it, whenever the stars align in the configuration to be able to see that astrological sign, or maybe it's that time of the year when that sign is in prominence, that's when these Pokemon take on these new and empowered forms. I think it'd be a really fun mechanic for a game, which makes it so that you have to change up your team depending on what time of year it is. I think that's really exciting, really fun, and really brings back the time mechanic first introduced in Crystal and Gold. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you think. Let me know in the comments below. I've got a lot of stuff going on. I talked about it earlier in the video, so I'm not going to bore you with the rest of that, but I will say check out our Discord. It's in the description below, as well as the rest of our links. We have a great little community there of people who kind of share each other's projects, see where we can help one another out, as well as just share one another's art and socials. It's a ton of fun, and the community's great. So check that out. I hope to see you there, and I appreciate all the support that you guys have been giving me. I can't say that enough. So until then, it sounds like you guys know where to find me. Bye.